Hello, everybody. Welcome to Taylor Tuesday. Sorry, we had a little glitch last week as we'll call it minor storm Sandy, whatever it was that blew through, took power out for a whole lot of people, including our illustrious speaker. So anyway, we're glad to be back on this week, and we'll also be back on next week. However, we're going to do 2 weeks in a row. So anyway, welcome to Taylor Tuesday. So we're very lucky. I'll let Ira do the introduction to Dr. Conenello. But Rob, it's good to have you. Good to see you again.
It's great to be here.
And Ira and I are going to help moderate and get us through this whole thing. We're certainly glad to have everybody on here. If you would go to the first slide, Rob, please.
Sure. There we go.
There we go. So you can get a replay of this. So you know that everyone wants to really peruse and look at this incredible product really deeply. If you want to get a replay of this, just check it out on the website. You can go to www.taylormedical.com. All of you Taylor users know that very well. And you can look for the post that says webinars in the upper right-hand corner. Please, take the time to go back and take a look. And if you have any questions, obviously you can use the chat box for us on the side here for Rob or Chris and or for Ira and I, if you like as well. But also just make sure you go to the Taylor website. Next slide, please. So remember, everyone, those of you who haven't done this already, get out the paperwork. Let's do the personal analysis, do the practice analysis. If you send the products to us, Carla and her team, they will take a look at this, and we just need to know who the vendor is, what you're looking for in your item, your SKUs if you've got those, units and measures, what size you're using, let's say a 30 cc bottle of Dex or something like that, and the price that you're doing. And then if you can email a spreadsheet to us at admin@taylormedical.com, you can get this incredible review of your products and see how much you can save. The savings are immense, and I know that Ira and I that work for these large groups, you've heard us say this before, but we save incredible amounts of money by going through this process, and it benefits everyone in this profession, including the student scholarships that we at Taylor have been giving out every year through the Podiatric Foundation. Next slide, please. So, Ira, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce Rob, and we can get rolling.
Good. This is really a pleasure for me. Rob and I went to school together. I think Rob was a year behind me when I graduated.
That's right.
And it's a small world, podiatry. We get to know each other. Everybody develops their own niches, and everyone takes different pathways. Rob really has developed an amazing reputation in the area of sports medicine, and he's been doing it for so many years. I unfortunately chose to go down the political pathway. I don't know if that was the right thing or the wrong thing to do. But just to give you all a little background on Rob, he's a past president of the American Academy on Podiatric Sports Medicine. He's a past global advisor for the Special Olympics and is clinical director of the Special Olympics in New Jersey. He's an honorary police surgeon for the New York Police Department. He's given a ton of lectures. I actually have a personal, I actually, when I was APMA president, Rob was the keynote speaker at the APMA national meeting talking about his life battling cancer, and I will tell you that it brought me to tears, and there were quite a bit of emotion there. So it really is a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to invite Rob, who's been an innovator in our profession, and he's going to talk to us about something that is sweeping the country very swiftly. How's that?
Oh, I like that. That's very good, Ira. Don't be corny. Oh, sorry. Podiatry humor. Well, thank you very much, Ira. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you, Taylor Medical team, and thank you, Saoirse, for having me here to speak. So this is going to be a pretty casual talk about treatment of verrucous lesions utilizing microwave therapy. But the first thing I want to say is that in my life as a clinician, I'm not looking for improvements. I'm looking for breakthroughs. That's what I really want to see. I want to see what's going to be that thing that's going to make me different than the next guy. So let's talk a little bit about that. So, and I apologize if I'm a little slow on this technical part here. I have to do my own slides. So during this whole quarantine time, I got a lot of chance to clean out my office and clean out my home. And one of the things I came across was this little paper that was written by a then 5-year-old Kyle Conenello, who's now my soon-to-be 18-year-old son. And it was about the wart. And I won't go through the whole thing, but basically it talks about a child's fear of having something on his foot and not knowing what it was, and that his father basically took out, and there's a picture in here, I wish I could show it to you, looks like a lightsaber, sword, and cut it out of his foot, and basically, had to give an injection, and then he was so fearful at the end of it, he had to be carried home, and and I read that, and I was like, wow, that's the perspective of a child. And that's the perspective of a parent of a child. And that's my own kid saying that. So I'm sure I've traumatized a few kids along the way and a few parents along the way by trying to do the right thing, but you never know. So it kind of made me think I want to do things a little bit better, because some of the typical ways we've been doing things maybe are just not the breakthrough that we want. So moving on. So what are our objectives today? Our objectives today are going to be, well, before I even tell what the objectives are, I'm going to tell you, when I was going through college and medical school, the two subjects I found most challenging were physics. So we're going to talk about microwave science here. And the other one was immunology. And we're going to basically talk about skin immunity and the condition profile for warts. So I think if I can understand it, I can help you guys understand it as well. We'll also go understand the current treatment landscape for treating warts with microwave therapy. And then at the end, we're going to do a little Swift commercial about profitability through differentiation using the Swift microwave. So let's get into a little bit of this physics, and we won't get too crazy about it, but basically, what is microwave energy? When we hear microwave, and I can tell you today, I had a young patient who came in, and I said, hey, we're going to use a microwave, a medical microwave on your foot. What is the first thing she thinks of as an oven, right? But, I think, when we talk about microwave energy, it's more than something that sits on our kitchen table. Microwave energy is basically just part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And we're all familiar with light, and we have photons, and they bounce around, and there's different frequencies. And if you think about it that way, microwave is just a different frequency. It's important to compare microwave in relation to other energy sources that we see. We hear a lot about lasers, and basically what laser is just an intense form of high energy. But when you start thinking about other modalities like X-ray, you see that on the right-hand side of the spectrum, X-ray and gamma rays, those are the ones that are ionizing type of energies. Those are the ones that can knock off bits of DNA and cause damage to yourself. So microwave is nowhere near that. Microwave is on that left side, and it doesn't do it. It just induces a thermal response to the material itself. And so microwaves have been around a long, long time. It's been established in communication. It's been established. We use it for measurement. And if you see here, a microwave kind of sits between things we're really familiar with, like radio frequency and infrared and radio waves, which we're kind of familiar with, like we said. The cool thing about microwaves, which is really interesting, is that microwaves are the same size as the bodies that we put them into. So the people at Sersha and Swift, they basically developed this product basically for podiatry, to get this energy into the lesions that we see. And we know that this energy form is superficial, and it's a very accurate form of energy. So that's what makes it so special. So let me just go over to the next one. Okay. So once again, let's compare microwave to other things. So like we said, we always think about microwave ovens, right? When you look at a microwave oven, it says there, that's a really high amount of power. We use about 1,000 watts. And we look at our Swift, it's 10 watts. But believe it or not, your mobile phone, your Bluetooth, those are all microwaves. They're an antenna. And just like the Swift is an antenna that generates microwave power. And you can see, if you would do the comparison, if you want to talk to your patients about it, it's more like taking your mobile phone and holding it up to your foot than it is and putting your foot in a microwave. Because our power level is so much lower at 10 watts because we only need to penetrate about 3 millimeters into the skin surface to get to treat a wart. Okay, let me move on here. Our next slide. So the biggest thing that I have to say about warts, and I thought about this in the past, is that when when warts were on my schedule to see them, sometimes I was frustrated because I knew that it wasn't a definitive answer. I knew sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't work. The treatment protocols I would offer to my patients. And it can be really frustrating for the podiatrist and the patient. And then it could also be really uncomfortable to have this. Now you look at this picture on the left-hand side, and this is Charlie. And Charlie is a patient of mine who happens to be someone who has cystic fibrosis. So he's immunocompromised. He's on immunosuppressants. He had a double lung transplant. But believe it or not, and I'm a sports medicine doc, Charlie is also a really avid cyclist, a really good cyclist. As a matter of fact, I went out one time with Charlie after his transplant, and he kicked my butt. But he told me, hey, I got this stuff on my foot, and it's really uncomfortable, and nothing gets rid of it. And when I put on my cycling shoes, it's frustrating to me, and I want to figure out a way to do it. So Charlie's on our list. After we can get him back into the office, we're going to start working on him and get him to where he needs to be and help him reach his goals. So next slide we go to. So I was lucky enough to give a lecture one time at the APMA national meeting. And that time was about misconceptions in sports medicine and perhaps myths that we also kind of cling to for a long period of time. And I remember I was giving this lecture, this older doc got up and he stood up and asked me a question. He said, Dr. Conenello, I think everything you're telling me is incorrect. He goes, I think that, the way I've been doing it for the last 40 years is good. It works. And I don't think I have misconceptions about things. So I said, well, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but, perhaps you just want you to think. And we're talking about things about ice and things like that. Do we really need to use it? And he finally said, no, you're wrong. I'm like, well, would you like to come up here and give your point of view? He goes, no, I don't want to do it. So I finally said to him, because he was starting to heckle me a little bit, I said, hey, you know how science and medicine evolves? When the old scientists and the old doctors die. So pretty sure I'm not going to get a birthday card from him. But, the moral of that story is that there's an old way and there's a new way. And sometimes you got to take a chance in order to see a change. So keep your mind open to lots of different things that are available, and keep your mind open to when we talk about things today. So plantar warts, they're a really common problem, right? We see them mostly like in the teenage years, and usually, teenagers and younger kids, they can really deal with them pretty well. They can get rid of them without a problem. But, we do see them as well in adulthood. And when we see them in adulthood, they've been there for probably a pretty long time. And the British Journal of Dermatology said that around 7% of adults have plantar warts, and a lifetime risk of infection is about 41%. So nearly half of all adults acquire a wart. That's a pretty significant number. So like we said, especially if we're dealing with an athlete, it can become a real problem. So once again, going back to that British Journal of Dermatology in 2014, they did an assay, a survey, and they went over all the different ways of treating warts. And a lot of the things that they found were that, things including like sal acid and cryotherapy. They said sal acid had about a 60% success rate, where cryotherapy had about a 50% success rate. But then if you read down a little bit further down in the journal, it said data from systemic reviews show plantar warts are less likely to respond to these therapies. So those success rates are much lower for warts on the plantar aspect of the foot. So that's something, that we're thinking, we're having a therapy that's, probably closer to 25% effective. We maybe got time to start thinking about something different, especially since these therapies, like I said, have been around for such a long time. So let's talk a little cell, immunology. Let's talk about, how our skin immunity process works. So we know that microbes and viruses, they get into our skin. How? There's the foot, especially if we're talking about an athlete or a young person, they perspire a lot. There's cracks in the skin, and that through those small breaks in the skin, the microbe gets in, it produces a protein. That's your antigen, right? Once it gets in there, it's detected by the main dendritic cell of the epidermis, which is the Langerhans cells. And that's a real key player to this whole thing. And Dr. Ivan Bristow from England, he basically, and I want to thank him because most of these slides are from his collection, and he has helped us quite a bit. But, he always says that, the Langerhans cells are kind of like the policeman. And that policeman, is patrolling. It latches on to that antigen, who is a criminal, and brings him to the lymph nodes, and brings it to the CD8 lymphocytes. And once there, that's the judge. And the judge says, you either live or you die in this court. So if he says you die, then it triggers the T cells, which are special forces, to go in there and to clone and to go and migrate to the infection site and eliminate the infection. And usually that works pretty well, you know, but just remember those Langerhans cells are critical to this immunity. I think I have a little picture here to kind of just show you. And there you see the antigens entering the skin on the top. They get picked up by the Langerhans cells, are presented to the lymphocytes, T cells are cloned and go to the infection and clean it up. So that's usually how it's supposed to work. So we know it's about warts, you know, and HPV, it becomes a persistent challenge. Now, why is that? So contrary to normal skin conditions, HPV is unique. First off, it doesn't have surface markers. It doesn't, you know, so the Langerhans don't know that it's there. So the viral cells go undetected. The other thing is that the wart produces a protein that suppresses the ability of the Langerhans cells to detect it. So it's almost like it cloaks it. It's not allowed to be seen. So that, and this is basically when we're going to start talking about the Swift product. It attempts to solve this. It kind of tries to uncloak the HPV virus to produce a natural immune defense for our own immune system. So moving on. Okay, so we talked about this already. You know, so current wart treatment. This is just a few of them. There's much more. Like I said, cryosal acid, cantharidin, which I really, you know, I don't like using that because I never know if I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night with a phone call that says, "Hey doc, there's smoke coming out of my foot, and I think I have an ulcer." Lasers are unpredictable. Cautery, and even a surgical excision. We're going back to my story about my son Kyle, you know, getting that excised. That's you know, sometimes those outcomes can still remain disappointing. So you know, what the problem is, and I love this quote, right? If you have a hammering tendency, every problem is a nail. So if you only have a certain amount of tools that you can utilize, you're going to go back to those all the time. And the problem with that is that, you know, maybe it's not the best treatment choice until now. And just to show you, I like this is another Dr. Ivor Bristow thing. You know, he talks about the cloak of invisibility, and that's what happens basically with the HPV infection. It kind of it cloaks itself so you can't see. So if we were to go in there, perhaps we're Swift, we'd be able to take Harry Potter's cloak off, and the immune system would be able to do what it has to do and allow the Langerhans cells to do what they're supposed to do. So move on here. Sorry for the little delay here. It's a technical issue. So this slide really speaks to how Swift works. So when we talk about Swift and microwave energy, we're not talking about ablation. So we're not bringing temperatures over 50 degrees, okay? We're really just using things more in the you know, less than 50 degrees, about 43 to 46 degrees Celsius, which is probably, you know, just warmer than human body temperature, probably like the temperature of a really hot tub. But the key here is that it's the rapidity and the controllability of the microwave that allows this whole cascade of things to occur, including the release of heat shock protein 70, and then inflammatory modulation and immunotherapy and interferon release. So all these things happen, and in very simple terms, the microwave essentially uncloaks the virus, and once detected, the body's natural immune system can do what it's supposed to do. Okay, moving on. Okay, so this was the research that Dr. Ivor Bristow did, and in his lab, he did two different things. First, he had a lab study where he irradiated skin samples and that had HPV on it, and he used microwave, and as well as he used cryo. And one of the things that they noticed is that when they did it with they heated it, they did this heat modulation, they noticed that the release of this heat shock protein 70 was released with the microwave, and no cellular changes happened at all with cryo. And the funny thing is that, you know, when you go to a research lab, if they want to keep the Wart virus stable, they keep it in a cold environment. So it kind of makes no sense that we use cryo a lot of times for this. So that was the interesting thing. Now, then he went on to a clinical study, and in his study parameters, he looked at a couple of interesting things. He looked at lesions that were around for 5.3 years on an average, and had multiple failed treatments, and he didn't include kids in this because kids' immune systems are pretty strong. So he does this presentation, And what does he find out? He finds out that of all the warts, he had 54 warts that they treated, 41 had resolved, so 75% effective rate. And he had like I said, these were the worst of the worst warts out there. And some of the ones that, didn't even work out were people that they lost along the way. And he had a very stringent success protocol as well. So he had to notice that there was no more pain to him. There was no normal dermatoglyphics that were seen afterwards. So there was a really strict protocol. So although it was 75.9%, it was probably even higher than that. And clinically, I could tell you that is the case. Okay, so just moving on here. So what's the treatment protocol for dealing with this? So basically, when we use our Swift, it's usually 2 to 3 treatments, and they're spaced about 4 weeks apart. We follow up at the end about 12 weeks later. And how we do this is that we utilize our Swift applicator, and we usually use around anywhere from 8 to 8 watts for 2 seconds. There's 5 applications. So the whole thing takes all of 10 seconds. And depending upon where the lesion is, it might be in thinner skin by the toes. We might go a little bit lower. If it's down in the heel on a bigger person, we might go a little bit higher with our power. But that's basically the simple way of doing it. And I think I actually have a picture here I could show you. Yeah, this is the, you can see that's the unit right there behind me. We're taking care of this patient. And the one thing is that we know is that the Swift applicator tip is about 7 millimeters in diameter. So if you have a really large wart, if you have mosaic warts, sometimes you just try to overlap it a little bit and in order to get the whole area. But it's not necessary to get every single lesion, because what we're doing this is, an immunotherapy. This is immune modulation. So you might have a lesion that's on your finger, and you're still going to get a response just from what we're doing here. So here we go. So what are some of the advantages of Swift? Well, like we said, it's really quick, 5 2-second blasts and we're done. It's easy to use. It's not a real large learning curve to it. This is one thing I like more than anything. It's predictable. It's repeatable. It's evidence-based, which is really makes it's very meaningful to me. We want something. If you're going to have someone come in here and you have a kid that's dealing with this, we're going to say, listen, this is going to be a cure. This is not a treatment. This is something that's going to make a difference. And guess what? We don't have to inject you. We don't have to numb you up. There's no needles involved here. We don't have to use any special filtration because there's no plume. There's no smoke produced. There's no dressings. You're basically going to go out of here right from when we do it today, and you're going to walk out and be able to do whatever you want to do. So if you're an athlete, if you're a runner, if you're a swimmer, you don't have to worry about putting bandages or duct tape on your foot and having people see it. It's going to go away right away, and there's absolutely no downtime. So without further ado, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of my case studies. So I have a few here. So this is patient A, and this is one of the first ones I did about 1.5 years ago. This is a 14-year-old boy, and he had a 3-year history of this mosaic lesion. This is between his toes, and he had a bunch of these. This is between his 2nd and 3rd. He also had between his 3rd and 4th, and he was unsuccessfully treated for over a year with sal acid, cryotherapy, and imiquimod. So, and the person who unsuccessfully treated him was me. So I know it wasn't working. We tried all different things and nothing was working. So we decided to let's see this young guy, and we decided to do the Swift treatment. We saw him for every 2 to 3 weeks, and before we started, he was kind of a lucky one. So he said it was just annoying. He was embarrassed by it, but there was really no pain involved with it. So he had a 1 on the scale of pain. So this was what we saw, as we were going along. Like we said, 8 watts, 2 seconds times 5 per site. And since this was a mosaic, we did that overlap treatment that we showed you before. And we did 3 treatments 4 weeks apart. And lo and behold, this was at the 12-week period, you could see we're starting to see the skin dermatoglyphics are starting to look more normal. The kid was ecstatic. It was back to normal. We saw him a few months later, and this is totally resolved. Looks like total skin, normal skin. There was absolutely no scarring to this area, and the patient was 100% cured. Excuse me. Okay. So moving on, this is patient B. This one looks pretty nasty. So this guy is a little different. His pain level was 5. He's a physical therapist. He's a 46-year-old guy. He's a guy that sends me a ton of patients too. He's a sports physical therapist. So he came to me, he goes, Doc, what can you do for me? This thing is gross. and he was trying to treat it himself with acids. As you could see, his skin was beat up. He's a runner, avid runner, and he couldn't do it because it's killing me as soon as I get running after the first mile or so. So he was in really good health, and like I said, he did home cryo and sal acid. And this is after only one treatment. This was between his toe as well. After one treatment, he went from this to this. So, and the cool thing about this is that, and he was a good friend of mine, so we kept conversation as we went along with this. He said, after the first couple of days, my pain level went down. The lesion was still there, but the pain went away. And that was, was significant. So that was a big one. This is patient C. This is a kind of a cool one to talk about because patient C, again, one of the first ones I ever did. He's another guy that I'd treated for a long time. He had a 2-year history of this lesion. It was a large lesion. It was about 2.5 centimeters. And his level of pain was really high. It was 8 to 9. And this guy was a really good athlete. He's a club golf champion. And he said, Doc, when I'm playing, I just, every time I torque or twist on that, it's really, really uncomfortable. And like I said, he went through some of the similar things of sal acid, cryo, imoclomid, debridement. We did needling for this guy. We did an excision. We tried to do an excision. We sent it out. It came back as a wart. It came back again. It just recurred. So we hit him with 8 to 10 watts for 2 seconds. And so his was interesting. So like I said, one of the first ones I did, I was still a little green on this one. So I wound up doing this 6 applications. And you can see, as we go along, little by little, it still looks like it's there. So I was really dejected at this time. I was like, oh boy, this is just not working. I said, hey, I'm sorry. This was a failure. We tried our best. And he was really cool about it. He's like, Doc, he goes, I'll tell you, Doc, my pain isn't that bad though. He goes, it's still there, but I don't have pain anymore. Well, that made me feel good. But I said, maybe we should refer you to a dermatologist. There's no joke. Literally about 2 weeks later, he calls me up. He goes, Doc, I got to come in and show you something. He comes in, he goes, look, this is starting to change. And you can see it was only a little bit left of this wart was in that area. So and in a month after this picture, he had complete resolution. Normal skin lines were noted. He had no pain upon compression. So he was totally ecstatic. So, I guess the answer there is that he's a little bit older. He had this lesion for a really long time. So his immune system was definitely compromised a bit. So it was going to take a while for this to go away. The lesson learned here is that I probably didn't need to do 6 treatments. I probably could have just gotten away with 3 or maybe 4 treatments, and it probably still would have gone away. It just needed more time to take effect. So that was an exciting one. And here's our last one. This is patient D. She's an 8-year-old cutie pie. She's a healthy female gymnast. She's a level 5 gymnast, so she's really competitive at a young age. And she had a 3-month history of this. And the mom came to me and said, she's a young girl and she's doing this stuff and she feels uncomfortable having these. Plus, it hurts her when she's doing certain activities, especially on her beam. And she couldn't have Band-Aids on it. And she didn't want to spread it to her peers. So she was really upset about this. They tried, using Compound W and things like that, but it just wasn't working. So we said, all right, let's work with this patient. So she had 15 lesions on both feet. At this time, I, once again, was still new at this. So relatively new, I decided to treat every lesion. I really wanted to make sure she got rid of them. So we did 8 watts for 2 seconds for 15 lesions. And then lo and behold, after two treatments, she had complete resolution. So that was terrific, as you can see here in the picture. A huge difference just after just using this. And like I said, her treatment took a little bit longer because she had so many lesions. But the thing I've learned from it is that I probably could have gotten away with only doing some of the larger lesions, and they still would have gone away. So that was tremendous. So I'm a sports medicine doc, right? So I always think about game changers. And, is Michael Jordan a game changer? I don't think so. I think he's the greatest basketball player of all time, but not a game changer. The game changer in sport was definitely Dick Fosbury. Dick Fosbury in 1968, he decided that he was going to go backwards, do the Fosbury flop over the high jump. And he was an engineering student. He said, hey, let me just change my center of gravity and go a different way. And he set records in 1968. And the cool thing was that from that moment on, everyone did it this way. So I think that's what Swift is. I think Swift is a game changer. We don't want to treat symptoms. We basically want to treat the underlying condition. So I think that's where I love us to give something like this a change, and we all can be game changers as well. So without further ado, I'm going to switch this conversation over to Chris McNamara from Ontario, Canada. He's the co-founder of Saoirse. And if people say, what's Saoirse mean? Saoirse is a Gaelic word that means freedom. So we want you to get freedom from dealing with these warts. And he's going to talk a little bit about the commercial aspect of Swift. Chris?
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Rob. Really appreciate the in-depth overview. Certainly your passion and experience with Swift exudes here, so we really appreciate that and your ongoing support. Welcome, everybody. Nice to be here with you this evening, and thanks to both Ira and Mike and the rest of the Talar Medical team for this opportunity to talk microwaves this evening and its positive impact on Verruca. Talar has been a great partner of ours since we started this journey just under 2 years ago now in the US. Before we dive into the fun stuff and talk profit and marketing partnership, I wanted to touch on Rob's last slide, this slide that we see now. Using the example of the evolution of the high jumper. The scissor jump was created, as it states there, in 1896, and then we see the gradual progression in the approach over the next 70 plus years or so. Now, don't laugh, but this is very similar to the evolution of various wart treatments available today. Did you know that conventional therapies such as salicylic acid, ointments, injections, freezing have been used since the 1800s for viral lesions? This is not to discredit the conventional treatment modalities that some of you likely use today. It's really just merely to highlight the lack of innovation for the treatment of warts, albeit a very stealthy and frustrating condition to treat. Swift is podiatry's version of the Fosbury flop, game-changing, non-destructive immunotherapy treatment using microwave energy to uncloak HPV and target the root cause, which is the virus itself, rather than the symptom. So I love this example, Rob, and I use it all the time now, so sorry for the copyright.
No worries.
Next slide here. So really quickly, I'm going to go through some profitability, commercial advantages to Swift, as well as the marketing partnership that we offer. I only have a few slides, so bear with me because we'd like to open it up for some Q&A as well. So again, it's a non-ablative therapy, falls outside of destructive CPT codes, in particular, the one that we all reference usually, 17110. And that's because it is completely non-destructive immunotherapy with very strong predefined immunomarkers. We have higher profit per patient and per treatment. Conversion is been really one of the most positive data points we've seen over this 18-month journey so far in the US. We see over 70% conversion rate. What I mean by conversion rate is when a patient presents themselves at your clinic with a wart, we're getting 70% of those patients to agree to opt for Swift as their modality of choice. So that's great. And that's growing as we create more and validate more in the market. Patient flow powers ROI. I mean, that goes without saying. Our return on investment is higher and higher as we get more and more patients through. So we're going to highlight our marketing partnership here in a second. And resolution rules. We always go back to the root cause. What are we actually doing here? Are we solving an issue or a problem or a common challenge? And the answer is absolutely yes, we are. Warts are a very frustrating condition in both podiatry and dermatology, and we have a solution to help you with that very frustrating condition.
Hey, Chris, could I just say one thing about that last
Sure.
slide?
Sure.
One thing, we said 70% conversion rate. I'd have to say when you get more confident in utilizing that number just jumps out of the park, because then you're able to understand and, you can show your pictures and show your enthusiasm to the patient. So I think that number is much higher than 70%. I mean, I still lay it out on the table to the patients and to the parents. And I would say more than 9 times out of 10, they'll pick that choice.
That's great. And we are seeing that building confidence as you have those patient experiences, Rob. Mm-hmm. I know another one of our most long-standing users is getting well into the 90s in conversion, like you're suggesting. So that just gets stronger and stronger as you build more faith and see the actual patient journey and outcomes. So very positive. I'll apologize for the busyness of this slide out of the gates. But I'll draw your attention to the chart on the right side. And what we've done here is an illustration to demonstrate profit and our contribution of profit with Swift. So we're taking a very conservative illustration here. We're using 100 Wart patients per annum. A lot of you will see well over 100 Wart patients per annum. And we're only taking 50% uptake of those 100 Wart patients. So again, going back to the previous slide where we're suggesting, or where we're seeing 70+% conversion and higher, we're using a 50% conversion rate just to be very conservative to show you what the baseline profit would look like. So if we look at the destructive therapy column, the average revenue per treatment or reimbursement value per treatment in the US is $88. We use a variable cost. The variable cost we use is $9. It could be much lower than that, depending on what modality you use, and it could be slightly higher than that. Not really a significant number in the whole scheme of things when we look at this financial comparison. And then the gross margin is basically your $88 minus that $9 of $79 on average across the US. So very low value to treat warts at this stage. Treatments per patient is 2.1. So that's with the data that we've collected over thousands of clinics. It's consistently around that 1.9 to 2.1 treatments per patient. And that equates to the profit per patient under conventional destructive therapies of $166 per patient. If we move over to the right-hand column under Swift, we see the average charge per patient between $200 and $300. So we've used $250, and that's the data across our over 135 users to date. And then we have that tip that Rob referenced. It's a disposable tip used per treatment, and it's $65. And of course, that cost is passed on to the patient in this instance because it's a cash pay modality. And like Rob referenced as well, we average 3 treatments. So our gross margin per treatment is $185. So you see the pickup in profit versus conventional reimbursed modalities. And then you have that drop through of profit as you see the 3 treatments per patient of $555. So we're just taking the 185 there and multiplying it by 3 to get the $555 in profit versus conventional of 166 per patient. So there's a big pickup in profit when using Swift as well. And then we even figure in any of the costs. So our monthly lease for our device, which most of your peers do choose to lease the device to just, not have the big capital outlay and to keep it under their operational budget, is $497. Now I'll reference that $497 is the very to give you added incentive to opt for Swift, and that'll just take those payments even lower than what you see in the $497. And then, of course, I'll highlight the very bottom, which is the 12-month forecast. You see we're almost 3.5 times more profitable than conventional modalities. And if you're to take our 70% conversion, we're 3, 4, 5 times more profitable in terms of contribution using Swift versus conventional modalities. Our average payback, so our average payback on a device per clinic across our 135 users is 10 to 11 months. So that's very strong. You pay off the unit within the first year, a very strong ROI. Our annualized ROI is 132%. So very robust, strong financials for Swift. I'll move on to the next slide. Here's just a very simple case study of actual accounts. And this is just to show you that it doesn't take a lot of patients per month to be very profitable with Swift. So the practice 1 charging $200 all the way up to practice 3 that's charging the $300 value. And as we look down at patients per month, you see the profit per year, and that's after any cost. So any of the tip cost, any of the lease cost, it's still profitable even at $200 and only 1.9 patients per month. You're offering a treatment modality that you're getting better outcomes on, that's a differentiator, that still is profitable with minimal patient volume. And then as you go to the 300 and you see the patients per month build up, you see the subsequent profit and the ROI increase. There's also the intangibles, the indirect return on investment that we talk about in the business, and there's things like no more AR and collections, which can be a pain for a lot of practice owners. treatment time and efficiency. So it's very clean and quick, and your MA can do this particular treatment. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the acting physician doing the treatment. We can certify MAs as well. And then the brand enhancement, which is the most critical. It's, you know, competitive. It's a very competitive environment, podiatry. Lots of podiatrists. And how do you differentiate compared to the person down the street or across the street? A little bit about our marketing partnership. So, you know, we're intrinsically tied to our partners because of that tip. And so we're able to make significant marketing investment in our partners' marketing and website and patient recruitment side of the business. So here's an example of a landing page we have. This is specific to Chicago, but we do them regionally all over. And what we're doing essentially here is we are using our SEO, our search engine optimization, and Google Ads. So we will turn on a local Google ad campaign within a 10-mile radius of your clinic as you become a partner. And what we do is we make that patient journey easy, and we make them accessible for them to be able to find Swift near them and go and book an appointment with you. And they can book an appointment through our landing page, which is a patient site called warttreatmentinfo.com. Or they can navigate and use our clinic locator and go to your website, whereby we build and help you build and optimize a landing page on your website to allow the patient to easily navigate to Swift on the landing page and to book an appointment with you. So we're bringing new incremental patients to your practice. Here's a look at a Chicago clinic locator. So you'll see the greater Chicago area. And this is warttreatmentinfo.com. And when you become a partner, we put a pin in the clinic locator, allowing the potential patient to find you quickly and easily and book a treatment. And here's just one of the country. I mean, we're very pleased where we're at today in a short amount of time. Like I referenced, we have over 135 partners, but there's still plenty of opportunity out here. The opportunity is vast. There's lots of people walking around with Verruca, and you could be the first in your area to have a pin. And I think that's significant. You know, it gives you an element of exclusivity for a period of time, allows you to really get the benefits, net benefits of our marketing efforts and the incremental new patient recruitment, as well as allows you to differentiate in your local market, which I think is a very big factor when looking at our Swift investment in terms of marketing. Here's an example, or not an example, here's our schedule of other conditions that we're working on, some of them more relevant to dermatology and some of them more relevant to podiatry. I'll briefly skirt over a few of them. Actinic keratosis, we just released a feasibility study that's showing over 91% efficacy, no scarring or hypopigmentation. We're very excited about that modality in dermatology and potentially to some degree in podiatry as well. Actively working on a melanoma study, and this is in the UK. One that will be of specific interest to this group, I would imagine, is onychomycosis. What we can say is that we're actively treating patients. We have our protocol set. We're treating patients in the UK as we speak. And the reason why we're treating patients in the UK to start in the origin is that that's where the technology is from. So we always start there, and then we'll do more domestic papers as well as we move on. But the onychomycosis, we know microwaves kill the fungus. We know that they penetrate the nail very easily. We're making sure that they don't damage the nail bed. And then we're looking at patient progression to resolution at this stage. So very excited about that. We're currently doing a pediatric Verruca case study with wild foot and ankle of Chicago. And then we're doing a common and plantar wart RCT out of Germany, which is going to be a larger paper expanding on the work that's already been done by Dr. Bristow as well.
Chris, could you maybe just expand also on the study that was done recently about the recurrence rate?
Sure. Yeah, no, good point. And thank you for bringing it up. So we're just about to launch a 13,000 patient post-clinical follow-up. And what that's going to show is, and that's since 2016, since it was introduced in the UK, we're going to show less than 1% recurrence of a lesion, of a viral lesion. So That is really, really critical data. It shows this concept of immunomemory and the fact that we are actually not only having very successful resolution rates of 85% plus, but we're also having patients not have to come back for any additional treatment, which is critical. Thank you for bringing that up. This is my last slide. I did want to highlight the promotion that we're able to offer the Talar membership. We're excited to be able to offer a discount on the capital of $1,800, and this is valid for the month of August, plus 2 free boxes of tips, which is $1,300 in value, for a total discount of $3,100. How you can capitalize on this is you can contact us at hello@esersha.com. You'll see that email address at the bottom. We'll also have a follow-up email of anybody that's registered and attended the conference, where we'll give them the information to contact us and work through any additional questions they have and talk about the discount as well and the promotion as well. So I really want to extend a big thank you to Dr. Conenello. Rob, I really appreciate the support and the talk today. Also want to extend again another thank you to both Dr. Ira Kraus and Dr. Mike King for hosting and facilitating and their ongoing support and partnership. Really appreciate the time.
I wanted to ask one more thing, and Ira, I hope you don't mind me saying this. We got on this, and Ira said, I'm not sure if we really see that many warts. And I said to him, you're not looking for them. They're there. You just have to, see them. It opens your mind. It's a mindset. So you'll start saying, oh my God, they are there. I just haven't really been looking for them because I wasn't excited to treat them. So.
It's always interesting when I see these kind of things, and I was actually really kind of impressed with the pictures. A lot of times I get approached by different companies with new products, and the people that they're showing me pictures that are doing things are people that I really don't know. And sometimes for me, it's nice to associate something that I know is being done by people that I know, so I can really call them up behind the scenes and say, hey, does this really work? So it was really interesting. And we've got quite a few questions, Rob. Mike and I are going to bounce them back and forth a little bit. And then I'm going to try and show a short video about our next week's show. But one of the questions I have is, do you have to do any debridement if there's a large amount of hyperkeratotic tissue on the lesions, or do you just treat it with the Swift with no debridement?
It's a great question. Basically, you can do a small amount of debridement just so that tip lays flat and flush on there, because microwaves go in one straight line. So you don't want it to be off one way or the other, but you don't have to debride this down to bleeding. As a matter of fact, you don't want to do that, just so that the tip lays on their level.
That's excellent. So now do you ever use combination therapy, Rob? So do you have the patients who say, hey, I don't know this is going to work. I really want to try something else. Do you ever use things in combo?
Of course, and a lot of times, one of the issues that patients have is that they have hyperhidrosis, right? So you want to use another therapy maybe to kind of dry them out, use some product that can help that. So in that one picture I showed you of that cyclist, that's what we're going to start doing with him, because he does have really, sweaty feet. So yeah, that's one of the things you could do. You could use anything you wanted to as well, but the truth is you don't really have to. I think Swift has been a game changer for me. It's without question my go-to every time.
So I know, Rob, when Chris was talking the different studies, and it lies in with actually a question here. How do you explain the lack of recurrence? Obviously, you're telling me when you initially started this program that when you talk to your patients, you actually say this is a cure. Mm-hmm. How do you explain that to patients? This has been a conundrum for physicians for many, many years, and it's very rare that I would say to a patient, this is a cure.
Yeah, so it basically comes from the creator, Gary Beale, out of Scotland. He's from the ablative world, where they would blast lesions in the liver and heat them up way over 50 degrees Celsius. And what they found out, though, is that when you start doing this under 50 degrees, it releases this heat shock protein plus that cascade I was talking about. And that's what cures it. It's because now you're giving memory to that cell. It's going through a near-death experience, and now your own immune system is fighting it actively. So we don't want to say it's a vaccine, but because we're not introducing something different to it, but we're just using your own body. It's what we call apoptosis. It's the way of programmed cell death. We're just helping it along, and that's the cure.
That's awesome. So one of the cases you showed, Rob, you talked about your first one when you got going, and it's like, hey, maybe I could have stopped here. Maybe I didn't have to do 6 times. Maybe I could have kept going. So if, say, somebody does 4 treatments and they still see a visible, would you now just sit back and wait a while and maybe make a reassessment a few weeks down?
Yes, and I have. Since that time, I've learned. Because, first of all, they're expensive to get a treatment if you do it multiple times. And, it's a little inconvenient. But I've learned that, just be patient, watch it. And, some of the key things you look for is, is the pain. So if they're saying, hey, I'm no longer having pain when I compress this laterally, you're on your way. And I should have known that because that's what that guy was telling me. I don't have pain for it. It's still there, but it was going away. It just hadn't totally kicked in yet.
Awesome.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead. Did I cut you off?
No. It was just awesome. That was great.
So Rob, in kind of alignment with, you talked about when Mike asked you about combination treatments and you talked a little bit about hyperhidrosis.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts and beliefs with regard to using some type of product in the shoe gear to prevent recurrence? Do you feel that the virus component is there? Have you thought about using any of the new ultraviolet technology? I mean, is there different things that you would consider in conjunction, not just on the body, but the surrounding area?
Yeah, I think there's merit to treating the environment as well, right? So obviously you can't throw out all your shoes, but you could treat your shoes. So yeah, there's plenty of products that are available, including the ultraviolets. And I think that that's an important factor to consider because you want to change lifestyle for these patients as well, so they don't get this again.
So, one thing Ira and I were involved early in this process with Chris and Kevin and Pete and, trying to look at the coding world. And one thing that's really always impressed me, just as a little commercial for Saoirse, is, we looked very hard. We went through all these coding committee opinions. If you remember, Ira, we talked about, there's a code 76940, which is an ablative code in the oncology world. But to Saoirse's credit, they said, hey, because people say, is this a reimbursable procedure? Well, Chris made that very clear. This is not a destructive procedure. So the 17,000's out the window. But if you look at the description of this other code, it fit perfectly, with the exception of the fact that it's in the oncology world. And to the credit of Saoirse, they said, we're not going to play that game. We're not going to cheat. That's why, so this is a cash service. That's fine. That's what it is. I mean, some of the things we have, that's what they are. Because people ask, is this reimbursable? Well, yeah, it is. It's just, but not within the CPT world. And to Saoirse's credit, they didn't play that game or come into your office and say, this is the code to use and you're always going to get paid, and then have you get in trouble when you get audited. So I just wanted to give kudos to Saoirse because that's something I know Ira and I were involved in that in the ICDs and the CPTs early in the process to do that.
Yeah,
So.
and for Saoirse, I give them credit as well because it was an uphill battle because we as podiatrists, I've been in practice for 30 years now, we've seen a lot of different modalities that came out that generated heat, and blasted things away. So we're like, okay, here we go, another one of these things, but it's a totally different concept. So you're not seeing like you would see if you were to, ablate this destruction, this hole. Instead, as this moves along, you start to see this actually start to debulk and it gets smaller as time goes on. So it's a different way of looking at things. Once you grasp that, you kind of embrace it a lot more.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Dr. King, for the kind words. And the ethical route was the route we chose to take, obviously. And I think what we're able to validate now, and what we're really pleased with is 18 months ago we didn't have the data that we have today, and now having a nice community that we've built, and we're well over the 100 mark and approaching 200 users in the community, we can safely say that the model works and people are profitable and they're getting the resolution that we're suggesting. and they're getting the conversion we were suggesting, because when we talk about reimbursement and cash, that's the most common question we get: will my patients pay? And it's an understandable question. And what we can say now that we couldn't say 18 months ago is that absolutely your patients will pay. And why are they paying? We've brought it down to the root cause, which we believe is the frustration, both by the clinician and the patient. You know, these patients have seen multiple treatments or seek multiple treatments, over the counter, family practitioner, dermatologist, podiatrist, and they bounce back and forth. And we call that the frustration zone. And these patients are ready for a solution. They've come to a foot and ankle specialist for a specialized treatment. And so we always, you know, preach, like, don't underestimate the service you're providing and what the patient's looking for. And that's why when you can combine clinical outcomes with patient frustration, we get that high conversion rate that we're able to now officially tout.
Well, I think, Chris, the key is that as practitioners, we want to do what's best for our patients. And, you know, we look at different things. Look, I'm not going to tell you that we don't look for alternative sources of revenue, because the classical model for physicians with reimbursements have decreased over the years. Swift is just another component that combines both looking out for good patient care and providing new technology. And, you know, the reality is some things are covered and some things aren't, and it's been like that my whole life, even before I was a physician. So I don't anticipate that that's going to really change. What I'd like to do is I want to thank Rob and Chris for joining us. I'm going to play a quick video before we disappear. I know everybody, and I hope everybody is surviving through COVID. I never thought that I would see a second life-altering. You know, Rob talked about game changers in sports, and, you know, I thought that when I saw 9/11, that was going to be the game changer of my life. And I've seen two experiences now with Corona. So Talar has been trying to do their part to help out with what's going on. Next week, we have a session that's going to talk about making things comfortable for your practice by doing some type of, by doing antibody testing for your patients. So I'm going to give you a small snippet of what we expect to see next week. And then we'll just come back and we'll thank Rob one last time. So I'm going to just start this. Hopefully they gave me the directions the right way.
Wow, one shot, dude. Good job.
Well, I got to get it to oh, it's starting. It says the media could not be loaded. So let's see. Hopefully it's going to load up for me. I'm trying.
It's comforting to know that I'm not the only one having difficulty with this sometimes.
You know what, Rob? It's technology is our friend and not our friend. And
hey everybody,
I don't know.
Here.
I'm going to try
the
one.
Managing partner of DX Allergy Solutions, and
okay,
privileged to be part of the Talar Tuesday webinar series. And I just wanted to come on today to let you know that next week is the next seminar actually is on the 18th, August 18th, and I'll be speaking in depth. I might have a guest with me as well about COVID-19 rapid testing. So the whole purpose of my being involved in these calls is to talk about the COVID-19 rapid testing. And it's really more than a test. It's a program, a testing program. So we go beyond just here's your test and how to do it. We actually have coverage through our CLIA, our high complexity CLIA lab, so that all of our clinics are compliant with FDA regulations that stipulate at least a moderate complexity CLIA to run this test. So there's some things that we've done that really nobody else has done. Very exciting numbers you'll find as far as the sensitivity and the specificity of this test. It is EUA authorized. Keep in mind when this all began back in March, when different companies came out, labs came out with their tests, they were all just registered. In fact, there were hundreds that were just registered. And over the months, they weren't reviewed until the FDA got around to it. And when they finally did get around to it, only about, I think 8 or so made the cut. So obviously, we're working with one of the top tests available. We think the pricing is excellent, and it's now offered through the Talar Medical website. So I know that Siobhan's providing lots of information to you to be able to purchase these tests. And we'll talk more next week about, or not next week, but next seminar about best practices with your clients, your staff, staff family, how this really fits, when you read the test, what to do next. But I think if you're like most of our clinics, and we do have hundreds of clinics around the country that purchase these tests from us, you'll find that it's an extremely valuable tool to screen people. It's not a sole source diagnostic, but to screen people for IgG or IgM. IgG is the I had it antibody, means you were sick a while ago, you got better, and now you've got this protective antibody that the medical minds out there will tell you means you're immune. The IgM is the antibody that is indicative of active virus. So we'll talk more about that and then what to do in those situations and about the whole program in general. But we've worked really hard with Talar, and they've been extremely receptive and open and helpful in putting together a good communication program out to the clinics. And we really hope that many of you will take advantage of this as you find out more about it. But more to come, August 18th on the Talar webinar series, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.
Great. Anyway, I want to thank you, Rob, for coming on. Chris, thank you for joining us. I remember when we met for the first time at the SAM meeting sitting outside in Orlando. For those of you who are not members of Talar, please, we'll reach out to you. Dr. Conenello, I've already reached out to my sales team. You'll be hearing from them immediately. And we look forward to everybody joining us next week for talking about antibody testing. And I like to be prompt. I like to be on time. I like to finish on time. So I'm 2 minutes late. But anyway, Rob, Chris, thanks. Mike, as always, it's a pleasure. I actually haven't seen you, and I think this is the longest I've gone in my whole professional career and not seeing you. So, yes. It's kind of strange. But anyway, guys, really appreciate it. Chris, thanks for the partnership. Let's keep it going.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
And Ira and I will see you next week.
Yep. Y'all have a great night.
Take care
Be
now.
safe.
Bye-bye.